thank you so much for coming to our first, what we hope will become annual State of the District event. You are in for a real treat tonight, not because of anything I'm going to say, but because we get a chance to hear from our exceedingly talented Novi singers, and they are going to come up at this time to sing our national anthem.
Beaming with pride, we stand side by side. Novi, we honor you with arms open wide. We sing to you with reverence, we cling to you forever. We bring to you a promise of our loyalty. We are true to green and white. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much, singers, and that is always a treat whenever we get a chance to hear them perform, and I really appreciate everyone that made this evening possible. Also like to thank our talented musicians in the band and orchestra who played for dinner, and also to kind of get everybody into this room today. It's been an exciting year, and so this is an opportunity where we get to talk about some of our successes in a year when we had a visit from the governor and we were rated the #1 school district in the state of Michigan. There's a lot to be excited about, but I also wanted to provide some updates and information on things that maybe you wouldn't know about, and so we hope that this is an event that you will identify with and enjoy. And so thank you so much for your partnership and being here tonight. My name is Ben Meinke. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Novi, and this is my first annual, what I hope will become annual, State of the Schools address. I do want to acknowledge a handful of people, and I will apologize in advance because I'm sure that I will miss a number of people, but I would like to acknowledge that the work that gets done in this district largely stems from a foundational relationship at the board level, and so we really appreciate our Board of Education members. I'd like, some of them are here tonight. I'd just like them to stand and be recognized. We have our president, Ms. Danielle Ruskin. We have our treasurer, Mary Ann Roney. I believe trustee Jason Mishner is here. There he is. And I also believe I saw trustee Betsy Bodwine in this area. Appreciate trustee Paul Cook, Tom Smith, and Willie Mena, and their support as well, as they were not able to be here this evening. I'd also like to thank the many staff and volunteers and partners that came tonight to support what we were doing. I really appreciate the tireless energy of our food service department. Have you ever had a meal like that at school? That's the question, right? all of our students who are volunteering tonight to help make it possible for all of us to come together and our kids to have a blast in the gym. Appreciate Justin Jarvis and his team for making all the technology work. And I'd like to especially thank Sheila Holly. So Sheila Holly is my executive assistant, and she is a person who really makes the world go round in a lot of ways for me. So I appreciate all of the energy. This was her baby. She's really kind of set this aside as her big event, and I said to her today she has a career and a future career in party planning if that's something she wanted to do. So if we could give Sheila Holly a hand for all of her hard work. So welcome, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where we've come this year. Obviously, this is an entirely new team, and I'm going to talk about those things for a little bit, but tonight's a chance for us to come together, and if I could use a good expression from one of our math teachers, to show our work. We have an opportunity to share with you some of the exciting things, celebrate some of our successes, as well as talk about upcoming things that we want you to be excited about as a community member and support our endeavors as a school district. We hope you enjoy the evening, and we will make improvements to it, we hope, and hope that this becomes an annual thing. So we have been transitioning to a new team this year. I think a lot of times people know who the superintendent is, but they're not really sure who the cabinet members are. And before I go into the transition of a new team, something pretty unprecedented happened here in which the entire cabinet really turned over in a matter of months. And so I would like to just echo and thank Dr. Steve Matthews, Dr. R.J. Weber, Dr. Gary Kinzer, and Mr. McIntyre for their efforts and tireless support and energy that they gave this school district and community for the better part of 10 years. So thank you to them. It's difficult to imagine hiring teachers in an environment like education is today, let alone hiring top-level senior executive administrators. And so we were very fortunate. We were able to hire, the board selected Mike Giramini as our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. We were really fortunate as well to go through a process and very shortly replace Dr. Kinzer with Dr. Laura Carino, who is a former principal at Parkview Elementary School. And then we were very also fortunate to land just a very smart, talented business professional in our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations, Mr. Devin Kling. And so we really appreciate their efforts and the way that our team has kind of growing together and learning. But there were also key leadership changes that many of you are aware of at the building levels. At the beginning of the year, really it was just Mr. Giramini and myself. We were told that we had to replace 3 principals in really a span of 2 weeks because school was getting ready to start. I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have some of the most talented administrators I've had the pleasure of working with. At Parkview Elementary, we had Miss Jennifer Murphy. At Deerfield, Mr. Ryan Francis, and certainly at Village Oaks, Miss Katie Dinkelman, who were able to be here this evening, but also to support our children in those schools. Unfortunately, we had another transition that was announced just about a month and a half ago, and Woods Elementary Principal, Mr. David Asher, is going to be leaving us in retirement, and Mr. Asher has been a foundational part of this educational community and this community as a whole for a long time, and he will certainly not be able to be replaced, and he will definitely be missed, but we are excited for him to explore those new endeavors in this stage of his life in retirement. So there are challenges for everyone when the team is new. Everyone wants to know, what's that guy about? What's he going to say? How's he going to respond when we do this? And so at the end of the day, this year has largely been about how do we build systems and how do we build support across our school district. Some of you may have heard me use this term, we're building systems, we're building structures, and that doesn't sound all that exciting. It's much better if I were to come up here and start quoting statistics about our AP and IB programs, and I will do some of that. But at the end of the day, a lot of the work that gets done behind the scenes that you may not see immediately is systems work. And so we've been doing a lot of work to try and become less busy and more intentional. And so there's a quote from David Thoreau, and it says, "It is not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about?" And in education, one of the things that we are known for across all school districts is doing a lot of initiatives, right? It sounds really good if we do this and let's do this, and we throw a lot of things out there, but at the end of the day, there has to be support for the people who are doing the work, boots on the ground, right? There has to be structures and systems that assure success. And so we want to be moving, and we talked to the staff about this at the beginning of the year, away from being a reactive organization, which is where you spend 70% of your time responding to things. And you can probably imagine that a lot of times the phone calls we get are not, thank you so much for the great work that you do, right? So it becomes more reactive, right? And so a lot of times reactive organizations do not move forward. And so we want to become a proactive organization where at least half the time we're working on our system, we're supporting our staff, we're supporting the work that needs to be done. I will say that one of the big initiatives we've had this year, and we talked to the staff at the beginning of the year, is that we were not going to be adding a bunch of new initiatives to their plate. Our goal was to try and build relationships with them, let them take a breath because we were emerging from a global pandemic, and we needed them to be able to have some space to grow, get to know us as a team, but also to build back their stamina to be able to do the incredibly important work with our children. And a lot of our kids have been through a lot through the pandemic, and so things have changed, and so we've had to adjust and adapt to many of the different pieces that come along with that. So we've implemented a lot of staff recognition pieces. We appreciate those of you that recognize and nominate our weekly Wildcat. We appreciate those partner organizations like NEF and Friends of Novi Schools who support our teachers and our staff and the great work that they do, and more to come on that. I would like to talk about communications and engagement. So one of the systems that we tried to establish pretty early was an opportunity for you to see that we are going to be very communicative, and those things should happen in a very consistent and assured way. So for example, you're going to get the Wildcat happenings every month. That's a district newsletter. You're going to get your newsletters from your buildings on Friday. If there's an update, there's a quick update, you're going to see my update. It's got a few bullet points. There's going to be some basic communication systems that are in place that you will be able to count on. Obviously, crisis communication is a part of that, and you've kind of seen, some of you have had to unfortunately see how we do that as well. And so communications is really important, the website, the content that we do, but those things are static. What we also want to do is look at engagement. And engagement is, for example, an event like tonight. A night where we come together and hope that we can have dialogue, that we can come together as a community, that there's some sort of interaction or something that would engage you in learning more about our schools. So we've talked a lot about the podcast in the past. We've started a Courageous Curiosity podcast where we ask questions about things that make us inquire and make us curious. We've started our elementary reading events and celebrations in the summer to start school. We're going to do those again this next year. We've had this event tonight. We've had several virtual town hall sessions. We've had student roundtables. We've continued coffee with the superintendent book club. We've just started board roundtables. This summer, we're launching parent advisory committees, and we have a plethora of PTO events and building activities and celebrations, and I dare challenge that any night of the week, there will be an activity in this district that's happening. So kudos to all of our team for the many, many levels that we're trying to engage you this year in different ways. That is a hugely important thing. Now, I went to the State of the State address, and every time the person that was speaking said something, everybody got up and clapped. So I'm noticing that that's not the way this crowd's going to go. All right. But I will say we are very proud of our engagement and communications, and George Sipple is a big part of that. His job is to constantly be thinking about how we can get information to you that is in a meaningful form. I also want to talk about our expanding community partnerships. So when I started, there were relationships with various groups, and there were some that were just fledgling. And so we're working on excellent partnerships and collaborations with many of our community partners. Specifically, I'd like to talk about our friends with the city of Novi. Novi was recently rated as the number 10 city to live in the entire United States of America. We're truly blessed to have a community like the city of Novi that provides so many amenities and so many support services to its residents. I've greatly appreciated the warm welcome I've received and the partnership that's been felt by our mayor, Mr. Bob Gadd, and I believe Mr. Gadd is actually here tonight, so if you could stand, sir, and be recognized. I cannot thank you enough for your support and the support of the city through a transitionary time for our school district. I've also loved working with the city staff as well as Pete Auger, who left, but now get to work with Victor Cardenas. I didn't say that quite right. Victor Cardenas. Sorry about that. But Victor is the interim city manager and has done a great job and enjoyed working with him. We've also worked to build relationships with the business community. I believe Janet Bloom is here from the Chamber of Commerce. Have had an expanded partnership with our business community because a strong business partnership allows for our students to have more opportunities, internships, and experiences in the workforce. We don't have a talent shortage here in our community, in our school district, in our schools, and so we want to share that talent and give those kids opportunities in the business workforce, and so that's going to be an awesome partnership that's being expanded. We've expanded our partnership with Novi Rotary and being able to support many of the successes that have been through the senior dinners, the senior luncheon at the middle school. We've had a number of other events that the Rotary has partnered with. We're getting ready to do Feed the Need. We appreciate the Japanese School of Detroit and the Japanese Business Society. We are critical partners with them, and actually Novi is the largest school district in the state of Michigan, has the largest number of Japanese students in the state of Michigan, and that is something we're very proud of. I would also be remiss, and I know I'm going to miss somebody, but groups such as the NEF, who support our staff so much in our school district, the Novi Community Coalition, the Japanese School of Detroit, which I've mentioned, the parents of African American students in Novi, Novi Youth Assistance, the Novi Mental Health Alliance, Friends of Novi Schools, Easter Seals, and so many more, who have, many of which had tables in the atrium. We are really growing our community partnership because we are a community school district and we have a lot of opportunities to grow those. So thank you to all of our partners. I want to talk for a moment about our instructional programs. Our instructional programs couldn't be stronger in the district. Novi students have more opportunities than most students, and we have many complex systems that are designed to support learning. Our special education and our MTSS system, which is known as the multi-tiered systems of support, allow for students to be able to get support at their level of challenge. It allows them, when students are struggling, to be able to have the support that they need. We also support our children with one of the few high schools in the state of Michigan that offer an international baccalaureate program as well as an AP offering at the same school. We've expanded our outdoor learning spaces. We're constructing a new cat lab, which is going to have about $1 million of FANUC robots to be able to train our students mechatronics, how to be able to adapt and use robots in the real world. These are things that kids in other school districts do not have the opportunity to do. We're also looking about continuing our current initiatives from this year instructionally, but we're going to be looking at a K-5 literacy program next year. We're also happy to announce a character education program, K-12, which will help support our students in their social emotional learning and skills and how to address those things. We're also going to be announcing some really exciting things related to AI in the classroom. So you've heard about generative artificial intelligence. These are things that schools are going to have to learn to grapple with as they become requisite skills for employers in the future. This is actually something that's becoming required skills for employers now. And so we have a team of people that is very innovative, and they're looking at this in a way that makes sense and protects our kids, but also gives them the skills to compete in a global economy. Finally, in the next 12 months, we're going to be announcing some very exciting partnerships with some of our career and technical institutions. One of the things that we believe in here in Novi is obviously providing a very rigorous and expansive opportunity for our children, but we also want to support our kids that maybe aren't going to college or don't have those same expectations. And so we're going to be looking at a lot of career placement opportunities for kids to be able to get jobs, internships, and get experience while they're still in high school. School safety is a topic that unfortunately I wish I didn't have to talk about, but we've invested a lot of energy and time. Our school board has supported some very strong initiatives in our school district, and you'll notice that many of our entrances are now very hard, secure vestibules. We've hardened the entrances. Those have led to a variety of other domino effects, but obviously some things we can't speak of due to safety reasons, but we have a number of security protocols that we train in on a regular basis. Our active shooter preparation program is called ALICE. We've also enhanced our security cameras and increased the number of them. We have included a partnership here with Chief Eric Zinzer, who is also in the audience. Chief, could you stand and be recognized also? Thank you. Chief Zinzer and his team, as well as our liaison officers, Julie Warren and Sarah Molnick in this building, have been absolutely incredible in helping keep our kids safe. We have just engaged an entire project where we are mapping out our buildings so that a first responder would be able to know exactly where the emergency is coming from, and they'll have interactive maps of all of our buildings, and that's being completed as we speak. We've also worked very closely to try and build fast and transparent communications during crisis, and that remains a top priority. Keeping students safe is a critical part of our school district. The last thing I'll say is that we've just released information on SafeSmart gun safety training, so for those people who are gun owners, to remind them to safely store them and lock them, as that is one of the #1 things we can do to help keep our community and our school district safe. One of the things emerging from the pandemic that you may not necessarily think of as a school priority is student mental health. And in fact, what we know about learning is that unless children feel comfortable, unless they have their needs met from a social emotional side, it will be difficult for them to fully invest in their academic pursuits. So we continue to offer expansive student mental health support emerging from the pandemic. We've also obtained and continue to apply for increased mental health grants and support through our state. We have a large number of counselors and social workers, and so we would always like to add to that mix. So if you know anybody, please tell them to send Dr. Carino their resume. But we are constantly expanding our mental health supports. Next year, we're looking to support even more staff in this area and expand our ratios so that more students have access to critical student mental health care. I'll speak just briefly on the state of our finances. When Mr. Kling started this year, there was some question as the budgets were difficult to predict after, again, the pandemic. There was a lot of federal funds coming through, and it was a challenging time to try and predict where we stood financially. I'm exceedingly happy with his progress in bringing clarity to our budget with our board and making sure that we can offer transparency to our community. But we are in a strong financial position with our operational fund equity of over 15%. We're in a strong position, as well as for our bond rating, which actually exceeds the state of Michigan's bond rating. And so we're sitting in a very good place financially. So those things help make everything else we do possible. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention our incredible maintenance and operations team. And when I say incredible, it's because they're a crew of 11 people, and these 11 people keep 1,650,000 square feet of operational space in our district going. And you imagine that's a lot of square footage for 11 people. On top of that, 285 acres right here in the city of Novi are school district properties. So we're so appreciative of Mike Dragoo and the maintenance team, some of which were they had a table out there tonight for the amazing work that they do. When I got here, I thought it was Disneyland when I saw the grass, and it truly is something that they take pride in. And so we're very thankful for them and all their hard work. Thank you. Transportation is one of the #1 things that I heard about at the beginning of the year, and apparently it was because prior to coming, and like many challenges that the district had, we didn't have busing every day, and that apparently wasn't very popular. So we started the year with a request from many parents to please offer buses every day. I'm very pleased to say that with Cindy Valentine's assistance and her team of 2 assistants, 2 mechanics, 1 dispatcher, and 27 drivers, they pulled that off, and we do transport every day. We still have a lot of challenges with recruitment. We have challenges with our walk zones and people that we're hoping to be able to transport more students. We would like to introduce our after-school bus program again. These are things that we're working hard on, and we hope that in the near future we'll be able to make some positive announcements in that area. But every day we deploy our dedicated fleet of buses and drivers to transport our children safely. And to put things into perspective, those drivers drive 3,000 miles every day and collectively get our kids to and from school. So we certainly do appreciate them as well. Some of you may or may not know that the Board of Education just recently voted to approve a land swap with the city of Novi, and this has been a project that's been hoping to become to fruition for a while, and it's a very, very impactful project for both the city and the school district. And so what you may not know is that the school district property here at this site, a large portion of it was owned by the city, including some of our fields, like where our softball field is located and our cross-country course is located. Conversely, at the middle school, we had property, for example, on our tennis courts, where half of it is owned by the city. And so those create very challenging situations. And so we desperately wanted to have that property that was close to us. Also, the city is looking to expand its services to the city and provide a splash pad, which is a vision that I know the city council has had for a long time, and Mayor Gatt. This has been something that they've been trying to bring to fruition, and so the Bosco Fields that the school district owned became a part of our swap. This exciting swap is going to allow future expansion opportunities, and we're very grateful for the city for their partnership in helping this become a reality. I'm going to talk briefly about capital projects and construction. So in 2019, and we're going to do a breakout session on this, but in 2019, what we thought that we'd be able to buy with dollars for the bond and the 2019 bond is not what you can buy in 2023. Through hyperinflation, through supply chain issues, and all of those types of things, we had a tremendous challenge on our hands. I'm pleased to say that we are going to be able to deliver to the community everything we've promised. And so, with that being said, we've had to make some strategic decisions on how we were going to engage all of the remaining projects that we had on our list. We've been engaging a master planning conversation, which includes stakeholders from all of our different affected groups. And obviously, one of the big marquee projects that we're doing right now is the New Meadows building. And if you drive by Taft Road, you'll see one of the most innovative state-of-the-art facilities that will be a model for other school districts in this state. It will probably be the nicest school building, one of the nicest for sure, in the state of Michigan, and people will come to see it. It's going to be right here and will be able to be for every single one of our 5th and 6th grade children to come through. The Novi Meadows project is on pace. It is actually ahead of schedule. And so what will happen is that next year, that building will open in the fall for our 5th grade children. Following that year, so next year, the second phase of that building in the back will be completed. And so next year, our 6th grade students will remain in the 6th grade house, and then they will go to the New Meadows building the following year when everything is completed. This master planning process has brought about some things that we have already determined. We're going to be constructing a new state-of-the-art Novi Robotics Center in what is now the 6th grade house, providing a centrally located, high-quality robotics center for our students to compete at the highest level, which they already are, but this will give them a much better space to be able to even the playing field with other schools. We're also going to be providing a high-quality adult transition center for our adult transition students to age 26. We're going to be building a center-based program for our students with autism that need additional supports and facilities to help them thrive. And we'll also be transitioning this high school site with a new indoor activity center, which will schedule to break ground in 2026. Lots of exciting things in our capital projects over the next few years. I'd also just like to highlight our adult learning and ESL program. Not a lot of you may know this, but we service over 300 residents in this community, many of whom are learning to speak English for the first time. And this is a tremendous offering that we offer out at our Roar Center, and most people don't realize that we not only support 70-year-olds, as well as 7-year-olds. So quite an age range that we support here, and we're very excited about that. I want to talk for a moment about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a topic that has been highly politicized in many school districts. Unfortunately, it's become politicized because of often a lack of clarity or understanding of what these words actually mean in the places that we're working. So here in Novi, I'm proud that our teams of talented educators work with us to provide a recommendation that our board has approved that defines what diversity, equity, and inclusion means here in Novi. Basically, to cut to the chase, what it boils down to is that our school serves all children, regardless of their background, their experiences. In fact, our diversity is one of our largest assets, and we all benefit from holding each other up. Every student in our school district deserves an educational experience where they feel included, like they belong. This is the main thrust of our work, and in this area, we are proud to continue supporting our students by ensuring that they learn how to engage others with empathy and understanding, how to have compassion, and also how to genuinely learn from each other. This is a much important area of our district, and we're excited to support all of the various backgrounds of our students that come here that we support. There's not enough time in any evening to talk about all of the success stories of our students, but I'm going to highlight just a handful. Our elementary schools are pretty amazing. They've received high honors in almost everything that they compete in. Our students participate in so many things statewide at the elementary level that earn awards that are including but not limited to the Invention Convention, Science Olympiad, Lego League and Junior Roblox, the Michigan State Youth Chess League, Math Olympiad, Spelling Bee, and I can't even list all of them. But the reality is that our children at the elementary level have so many opportunities to do different things. Orchard Hills has worked with their salt shakers in creating leadership teams and junior playworks leaders. Our Novi Middle School uses the POWER rubric to guide their practices in perseverance, ownership, welcoming, empathetic, and respectful to guide their practices, and we're recognizing over 125 Wildcats with the POWER certificates so far this year already. We had 29 Novi High School students earn National Merit Scholarship declarations. This is unheard of. In most school districts, they're fortunate if they have one. Our athletic teams continue to compete in one of the one of the hardest leagues in the state of Michigan, the KLAA. They make a great showing for themselves in all of our state tournaments. Band and orchestra continue to excel competitively, marching and earning top honors in almost every competition they enroll in. Our middle school continued and brought back the Rotary Senior Citizen Luncheon this year, which was a huge opportunity for our kids to learn about service. Our esports team has already won a state championship this year, and they continue to compete this season. In fact, next week they'll be competing for another state championship. Our robotics team just went and qualified for the national competition yet again. There are more clubs and activities at this high school than we can count. The list is over 100. At the Early Childhood Center, we had a student recently, Carson Friel, who's a student with autism. We got permission from his family to share that he came back. He's an older student, but he came back to the ECEC to talk to his classmates, former classmates, about what it was like to be a student with autism. Our kids are succeeding at incredibly high levels, both in ways that are tangible and ways that are more effective. But our school district was rated as the #1 school district in the state of Michigan for a reason, and it's because of our students. It's because of the work that they do every day, and it's also because of the incredible staff that we have to work with them. I could speak for a long time about the successes of our kids, and clearly we've had a banner year. We've had a phenomenal school year emerging out of what was a very difficult time for the past 3 years in all of public education. But I wanted to leave you with a just brief final thought before we get into a question and answer session. Schools all over have been through a rough patch these past few years, and Novi is not immune to that. But our people are simply the best. We have an incredible staff, families, and students who are working together to ensure that everyone succeeds. This idea that is being modeled by our students themselves is one of unity. We are a great city. We are a great community, and we are certainly a great school system. However, we will fully maximize our potential when we are truly united in the moral pursuit of every person succeeding. Unity does not mean uniformity. We all have different thoughts and opinions on how to get there. And our diversity, our culture, our backgrounds, and our ideas that are different is beautiful. However, we are one Novi, and our community will thrive because we care for each other. Thank you for caring for me, for our school district, for our staff, so that we can support every special individual that walks through our doors every day. I hope that you are as excited as we are to see where the district is heading, and I can't wait to see where we will go together. Thank you. I'm going to go against the advice of my team, and we are going to have an open Q&A. So Mr. Francis over here has a microphone, and Mr. Asher over here has a microphone. And if you just raise your hand, they will make sure a microphone gets to you. Any question that you have. I know that most of the kids aren't in here, but we still have little ears in here, so we have to be careful. Yes, Perry.
Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone. So you talked about proactive measures. On the school safety, I know there's a breakout session too. What are the other proactive measures other than the door system? I know there are a lot. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that, Mr. Manka?
Absolutely. So proactively, there's a number of things that we're doing. So in terms of preparation for those types of emergencies, our students and staff actually do train in age-appropriate ways with how to respond to those situations. I was actually at a classroom a couple months ago in Parkview while they were doing an intruder drill. And so what is said to, say, second graders is very different than what's said to an 8th or 9th grader, but yet the students know how to respond. The teachers do a very good job of making sure that they explain what to do in those types of events. And so we have done a lot of fire drills in the history of schools, yet everything that you buy in a school is flame retardant. So it's virtually impossible to, I don't want to say that with the fire chief here. So yes, but we do a lot of fire drills, and we actually are a much greater risk, most likely in a public school, of a threat from a shooter. And so we do drill and we do train on those things. We've also invested in some unique software on our cameras that have the ability to detect things. I don't want to go into too many details on that, but those are there. We also have special coatings in a lot of our areas that allow for the barriers of our buildings to be more safe and protected. The list kind of goes on. We're investing in a new program called Raptor, which provides a much better idea of who is in our building when, and making sure that we're keeping people that could potentially be a threat to children out. And so a number of proactive measures in that space, but I think it's got to be and continues to be a top priority. So thank you for raising that.
I know you mentioned that transportation was something that you received a lot of comments about, and it's obviously something that most parents are very concerned about. So I was wondering if you could spend a couple of minutes at this point to talk a little bit more about what we're doing and what strategies we have to increase the coverage for transportation for families. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, this is something that is across the United States. We're looking for bus drivers, right? And so one of the challenges that public schools have is we're competing with the Amazon drivers and we're competing with the trucking companies. So the certification that one has to have to drive a school bus is extensive. It's the same CDL that they would have to drive, trucking, equipment. Much higher precious cargo, but at the end of the day, it's a highly skilled position. But there aren't a lot of, say, 24-year-olds that are saying, I'm interested in driving 60 young people around every day. And so what has actually happened in this phenomenon is it's more about how are we stealing from other places. And so we have increased wages this year. We're hoping to do that again with the board's support to try and bring more drivers to our community. That is an active plan that Cindy and I have been talking about in Devon for about the past 2 months. And so we've started to reach out to some recruiting agencies, kind of some headhunting agencies looking for drivers. But it's also about supporting the drivers that we have, because we have really great drivers. So how do we retain the ones that we have as well? So it's really a numbers game. And so we believe that over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, if we can increase our drivers, the number of drivers that we have, then we will not have to double up on any runs, that we won't have to worry about not being able to take that late bus, that we can maybe reduce those zones of walking area, right? Those are all goals that we have. And so there's going to be some pretty targeted recruitment efforts in this space. And so we're fortunate and we're blessed to be in a community that has resources, but this is going to have to be something we leverage to try and increase our driver pool.
Yeah, on the similar lines, we were talking about the walking zones. So during winter, it is really difficult for a student to walk back home, even if it is just 1 mile. So for the existing buses, can we include the walking zone for the students who walk at least this 1 mile also because of this weather conditions? If that can be addressed, I think some of the issues with the existing students will also be helpful.
Yep. So that is certainly our goal. It is going to be difficult for us to do that right now just because, again, it's the same answer about having a number of drivers. But one of our goals is to say, can we shrink those walk zones if possible? Because for a kindergartner, for example, to walk even a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile, especially if there's a lot of snow, is very challenging. And so we do understand that. One of the other things that you probably have noticed is that there are a lot more people driving their children to school. And so if we can bus more children, and then there's fewer people in the parking lot, right, it'll improve traffic flow as well. So these are all things that we're definitely looking at and hoping to provide in the near future.
Good evening.
Hi.
Sorry.
You're good.
Question for you, is there any plan to change any building security plans? I know the way the current tag system works, if you have a tag active to get you into a building, that'll work at multiple buildings, whether you have any business at those other buildings or not. Seems kind of like a weak point to me in our system of security that, there's, I think, a few other loopholes in there too that could be strengthened up. Is there plans to get those exposed and tied up to keep our kids safer?
Yeah, actually, I think probably it's about a $3 million investment that the board has already authorized, but we're now in the process of deploying. So we have a system that we've purchased called the HS4 system. The HS4 system basically creates a digital reader that allows us to be able to have site control. So for example, we can give permissions to whomever, and know exactly who's coming and going at different spots, be able to curtail those privileges. And so that's going to be deployed across the entire district over the course of the next year and a half. So it's a timely question because yes, that is being addressed. We've actually hired a full-time person now, and their sole job is to manage that system, the door access system. Who's coming and going? What are the timers set for? What are their permissions? It's a pretty important and impactful part of our security process, but it also impacts a lot of other things. So for example, it allows for, say, students that are getting on a school bus to be able to have attendance taken instantly, right? Almost swiping a card, you know exactly where your student's at, and then of course the parents would know, my student is on this bus and here's where the bus is at this time, those types of things. So there's a lot of opportunities that are going to be expanded over the next year or two. But yes, to your point, we are definitely going to be improving those systems across the district.
Hi, Superintendent Minka.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing with us kind of the state of the district and the various initiatives. It's really pretty remarkable how everything comes together.
Thank you.
I am curious for you, perhaps, to share with us what scares you the most or is least optimistic in the future, if you will, and kind of give us some insight on that.
That's a great question. So one of the things that probably concerns me the most is the shortage of talent going into education at this time. We have the benefit of having some incredible teachers, but the number of schools that offer education preparation programs, for example, have cut their numbers by almost 50%. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of times when I started teaching, it was generational teachers, right? There were people that said, hey, I'm a teacher, you should be a teacher. And you hear people say, my mom was a teacher, she was my inspiration. I know Hattie McGuire just won the Teacher of the Year, and her mom was a teacher, and her parents were teachers. So that generational thing has not been happening over the past few years, and a lot of it's because of maybe the public perception of teachers. And I'll just say, when I started teaching, and I wasn't far from here, I was just down in South Lyon, but this is 20 years ago. When I started, if I called home, the parent would say, well, you just wait till they get home because they've got something coming to them, right? And that was most teachers' experience. By no fault of anyone's, that's not exactly the same experience that all parents give now. It's usually, well, what did you do? And those types of things make it very difficult for teachers to get excited about, I'm coming to work today and I don't know if the parents have my back. Now in this district, we are blessed because most of our families do a great job of that, but systemically across the system, it's very hard to be a teacher. They're being asked to do more, they're being asked to do more with less. Their pay has not increased significantly, certainly not compared to their peers in the private sector. And so all of those things are factors that scare me because I worry about the next generation. We have done some really great things in marketing our school district, and I think we're going to be okay for quite a while. So I think everybody in this room doesn't need to worry, but I worry about everybody in this room's grandkids or the people that are going to be coming before, because there are districts right now where we might have, say, 200 applicants or 100 applicants for a teaching job. There are districts that even are in the near vicinity of us that maybe have 1 or 2 for that same job. So the reality is that's the thing that scares me, is the future of how we're encouraging people to go into this profession, because it is one of the most noble profession that anyone could endeavor to do. You're working with children and you're impacting the future. So we have to keep championing that as a community and encouraging people to do that. And we are also going to be doing more and talking with our own students at our high school about going into this profession as well. And it'd be great to see some of our alumni coming back and teaching in this district. Got time for about 2 more.
Good evening, Mr. Mainka.
Yes.
So my question is about mental health. So I just want to ask if you have a future program or existing program about how to identify a student or a child that needs a mental health.
Absolutely. So again, we have some really great resources here. So Miss Hoppenstedt, who is actually in an interim stay right now at Orchard Hills, but she oversees a lot of our systems and processes related to mental health. And so one of the things that has been worked out in this district for a while is how to do an assessment, not necessarily that the child is violent, but how do we assess when a child is showing precursors or indicators that they're going to need some help or some support. We have without getting into all of the minutiae and details, we have a system that our social workers and our staff that evaluate, our counselors, our staff that evaluate these things know what to look for, and we're going to be expanding that. We also have some external things that we're doing. The Friends of Novi schools, as well as our school district, are looking at some grants from the state, and we're actually, through the construction process, looking at creating a wellness center here in Novi where kids would have access to mental health supports outside of the school day. So not just during school, but what do I do when we're in crisis at 6 o'clock and I'm not sure who to call, right? That we have support for that that's on site here in the district. And I just signed on with Oakland Schools. We're going to be one of 6 districts in this county, in Oakland County, that is piloting a Communities of Practice project with mental health, where parents will have access to coaching. So you might say, my child is telling me they have anxiety or they're exhibiting some concerning behaviors. You actually have a number you can call and talk to a live person that will give you some support in that area. It's a partnership with the Cook Center for Human Connection. We're really excited about that too. So again, I don't have as much time in my speech to give all of that, but there's a lot of mental health support that's coming because it is an area of huge concern for us. Yes.
I think I get last question, so
Yeah,
this is pretty exciting.
There you go.
Thanks for presenting today and taking the time to talk about all the great things that are happening.
Sure.
I loved hearing about the AI and the things you're doing around preparing students for jobs of tomorrow. Talking about your fear with skills gaps and things like that. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing to prepare kids in terms of career exploration and making sure that they have a plan for what's next after they graduate high school?
Yeah. So a huge focus for Novi for a long time has been to create a really rigorous experience in our schools. So I would just tell you, a kid that goes to a normal high school somewhere and comes to Novi, they're like, wow, it's really hard, right? And it is. And our students thrive and they learn how to kind of work through that, and it benefits them in great ways. One of the areas where I think we have a large room to grow are the kids that maybe aren't necessarily in that group, and they're looking at, I'm really good at working with my hands, but I've got to sit through Algebra 2 and sludge through this, right? So we're looking at partnerships, as we talked about before, with how do we get, it's really about post-high school credential. We want every single kid that leaves us to have some sort of skill that they can go out and market themselves, get a job, making good money, quite frankly, in many cases, better money than if they were to go to school, while still pushing forward and pushing the envelope on what we can do for our kids that are exceeding, those expectations at their grade levels. So there's going to be an announcement in the next 12 months that we're going to be talking about relative to the high school programming. And so the best way I can kind of vaguely describe it is by pathways, right? So giving kids, matching their interests to career pathways that are actually marketable and employable, right? So we're looking at careers that actually pay you money and you can get a living for, and there's a myriad of things for that. And so engineering and technology, health and human services, there's a number of those technical type careers as well as others that we're going to be looking at creating those pathways where kids are going to learn at a young age about what their interests and passions are, and then how do they connect that back to a pathway that's for them. So we use a program right now called Zello, and Zello is a way that Sarah Lephart at the high school does. Actually, she's coordinating it across the district, but the kids come in and they learn about what their skills are, and they learn about what they like to do, and then we start continuing that conversation about, have you thought about, and even as early as 8th or 9th grade, some of our kids will tell you, I'm going to be a surgeon. I talked with some of our seniors just recently, and they said, I knew what I wanted to be from the time I was a sophomore or freshman. And I said, well, it could change. Number one college major is undecided. But the point is that we need to do more to try and help kids connect with those areas of passion, and that's going to be a huge piece to this puzzle. So we hope to do this again. So I don't know, hopefully you found this to be somewhat mildly informative. Do we have one more question? You have one more? I'll take one more.
Sure. So last Thursday, as I'm sure you're aware, the anniversary of Columbine, those of us at Deerfield got that email that no parent ever wants to get, that there's an incident at school, police are responding. Apparently also through the grapevine, I've heard that Novi Woods had an incident where they had an anonymous threat where kids had to evacuate to the soccer field. Is there a reason why that information isn't shared with all the parents in the entire district and just the ones at that school?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an in-the-moment decision. I don't think that if I send an email to 7,000 people, I don't have any expectation of confidentiality. So, but I do think that there's a level of communication that we talk about that is, what is the information that you need to have? And so we live in an information-rich era, so everybody wants this information all the time. I'll give you an example. There are incidents that happen all the time. So for example, just over the past 2 days, I think we've had 3 to 4 situations where an ambulance has had to be called. We had a diabetic student was one of them. We had one student that was having a seizure. We had one situation where there potentially was somebody that was going to harm themselves. There are school districts that report this out all the time in the light of transparency. But in the end of the day, it becomes noise. And it's like, is something melting down every day at the school? Well, no, it's the normal business, the normal rhythm of how we do things. But at the end of the day, if there's a situation, you're going to know about it immediately from us, and if your child is affected. And there are times where, but depending on how public or how big it gets, we'll send a clarifying information to all of the schools. We did that with some of the threats we had at the beginning of the year. The situations at Woods and at Deerfield were on a much smaller scale, and in terms of the magnitude of those events, we always make a decision. So sometimes the decision is, hey, this is big enough, we need to send something like a communication release out to all the families. Sometimes it's, hey, this one's going to be isolated to the building. So I don't have a crystal ball answer to say it's always going to be this or that. other than to say we're not going to communicate every incident that happens at every building to all the families, because it would become a bit overwhelming and create probably a false sense of a feeling of maybe what was going on. So that's about as honest an answer I can give. I don't know. I'm sure there are people that are disagreeing. They're like, no, send everything to all parents all the time. But at the end of the day, those are judgment calls that are kind of made, in the moment, and we talk through with our teams about those things. So with that being said, I think we are at a point where we're supposed to kind of transition. And so we have multiple breakout sessions that are scheduled. There's going to be a breakout session for mental health that you can ask more questions. There's also going to be a breakout session for district construction and facilities plans. There's one on the new Novi Meadows building, and there's going to be one on school safety practices. And so to your question, sir, and then to anyone else that has a school safety question, some of our super talented law enforcement officers are back there, and they'll be able to give some perspective as well. So I believe that construction is going to be in this auditorium. School safety is over here. Mental health is in the commons. And then in the atrium, we have the new Novi Meadows, so you'll be able to hear about that building. You have many, many options that you can consider. We very much appreciate you being here with us tonight. I will stick around if you have some other questions that maybe are unique to you. And we hope that you will come back to this event in the future. And we're not going to have a formal dismissal. We're going to do the next 2 breakouts. They're going to be 20 minutes each. And so at whatever point you need to go and pick up your kiddos, our tremendous care staff and all of our teams are out there with your kiddos, and so they'll be ready to dismiss them to you whenever you're ready. So thank you very much.
A light correction, the new Novi Meadows building meeting is in the Dome. The school mental health